In the 4 months before Lindsay Clancy killed her 3 children, she was prescribed antidepressants, mood stabilizers, sleeping pills, tranquilizers, and antipsychotic. She told her doctors she was having thoughts of hurting her children. She told them she was having thoughts of killing herself. She was seen by multiple providers. She was put on more than a dozen medications. And then, on January 24th, 2023, she strangled all 3 of her children with exercise bands. Her 5-year-old daughter, Cora, her 3-year-old son, Dawson, her 8-month-old baby, Callan. Now, both Lindsay Clancy and her husband, Patrick, have filed lawsuits. Not against each other, but against the doctors and medical providers who treated her. They allege the system didn't just fail to help Lindsay. They allege it made her worse. This is a case that will force a jury to answer one of the hardest questions in criminal law. Can someone be guilty and also be a victim? Lindsay Clancy was a labour and delivery nurse at Massachusetts General Hospital. By every external measure, her life looked stable. She was married to Patrick Clancy, a high school math teacher. They lived in Duxbury, Massachusetts, a quiet coastal town about 35 miles south of Boston. They had 3 children. Friends and colleagues described her as warm, capable, and devoted to her kids. She had no criminal history, no history of violence, no red flags that anyone saw, until after the birth of her 2nd child in 2020. That is when, according to court filings and medical records, Lindsay Clancy's mental health began to unravel. After the birth of her 2nd child, Dawson, in 2020, Lindsay began experiencing what was later identified as postpartum mood symptoms. But at the time, the diagnosis she received was generalized anxiety disorder. Things escalated after the birth of her 3rd child, Callan, in 2022. Over the following months, Lindsay reported worsening symptoms to multiple medical providers. She described intrusive thoughts, anxiety that made it difficult to function. And critically, she told her providers that she was having thoughts of hurting her children and thoughts of suicide. Between September 2022 and January 2023, a span of approximately 4 months, Lindsay was prescribed a revolving door of psychiatric medications: antidepressants, mood stabilizers, sleeping pills, tranquilizers, and antipsychotic. According to her lawsuit, she was seen by multiple providers who were not coordinating with each other, each adjusting or adding medications without a unified treatment plan. Her lawsuit describes this as a disorganized, uncoordinated course of polypharmacy, a term meaning the simultaneous use of multiple drugs, often with compounding and unpredictable side effects. Dr. Margaret Spinelli, a psychiatry professor at Columbia University, later concluded that Lindsay was suffering from bipolar disorder, a condition that was never diagnosed during those 4 months. The significance of this is enormous. Several of the medications Lindsay was prescribed, particularly certain antidepressants, can worsen bipolar disorder and trigger manic or psychotic episodes. According to the lawsuits, that is exactly what happened. On the morning of January 24th, Lindsay took one of her children to a routine pediatrician appointment. Staff at the appointment noticed nothing unusual about her behavior. She returned home. She took the children outside to play in the snow. She texted photographs of them playing to her mother and to Patrick, who was at work. That evening, Patrick left the house to pick up food. Lindsay was alone with the 3 children. Using exercise resistance bands, she strangled all 3. Cora, age 5, Dawson, age 3, Callan, 8 months old. When Patrick returned home, the house was silent. He found a bedroom door locked. There was blood on the floor. A window was open. He ran outside and found Lindsay on the ground below the window. conscious but injured. She had jumped from the second story in an attempt to take her own life. The fall left her paralyzed from the waist down. She has been in a wheelchair since that night. All 3 children were rushed to the hospital. None survived. Lindsay Clancy was arraigned on charges of murder, strangulation, and assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. She has been held at Tewkesbury State Hospital, a secure psychiatric facility, since shortly after the incident. Her defense team has indicated they will pursue an insanity defense, arguing that Lindsay was in a psychotic state at the time and did not have the capacity to understand what she was doing or that it was wrong. The criminal trial is currently scheduled to begin on July 20th, 2026. In recent court appearances, her first in-person appearances since the incident, Lindsay was brought into the courtroom in a wheelchair. In late January 2026, both Lindsay and Patrick Clancy filed separate lawsuits against Lindsay's medical providers, including psychiatrists, nurse practitioners, and the health systems they worked for. Patrick's lawsuit was filed on January 21st. It is a wrongful death suit on behalf of his 3 children. It names multiple providers and accuses them of failing to properly diagnose, treat, and monitor Lindsay's deteriorating mental health. Lindsay's lawsuit was filed on January 27th. It alleges medical malpractice and names many of the same providers. It accuses them of misdiagnosing her bipolar disorder, of prescribing an ever-changing combination of medications without coordination, and of failing to act on her explicit warnings that she was having thoughts of harming her children. Lindsay is seeking more than $1 million in damages for the loss of her relationships with her children and husband, physical injuries from her suicide attempt, and what she describes as a catastrophic failure of the medical system to protect her and her family. The lawsuits allege that Lindsay kept asking for help. She kept telling her providers what she was experiencing, and the system kept adjusting medications and moving her along, without ever arriving at the correct diagnosis or an effective treatment plan. This is where the Lindsay Clancy case becomes unlike almost any other criminal case in recent memory. Typically, in a murder case, the prosecution and defense argue about what happened and who is responsible. In this case, there is no dispute about what happened. Lindsay Clancy killed her 3 children. That is not contested. The question is why, and whether the answer changes her culpability. If the jury finds that Lindsay was in a psychotic state, triggered or worsened by medical malpractice, the case enters extraordinary territory. She would be both the defendant in a murder trial and the plaintiff in a lawsuit arguing that the medical system caused the very crisis that led to the crime. The insanity defense and the malpractice lawsuits tell the same story from different angles. Lindsay Clancy was failed by her medical providers, was suffering from undiagnosed bipolar disorder, was over-medicated into a psychotic break, and was not in control of her actions on January 24th. The prosecution will argue that regardless of her mental state, she planned and executed the killings, pointing to the fact that she waited until Patrick left the house, used a specific method, and attempted to take her own life afterward. This trial, when it begins in July, will be one of the most consequential insanity defense cases in years. The Lindsay Clancy case has ignited a national conversation about postpartum mental health care in the United States, and specifically about how the medical system handles mothers who report intrusive thoughts about harming their children. Intrusive thoughts are common in postpartum mood disorders. The medical literature is clear on this. Having an intrusive thought is not the same as intending to act on it. Most mothers who experience these thoughts are horrified by them and seek help precisely because they are scared. Lindsay Clancy sought help. She reported her symptoms. She told her providers the truth about what she was experiencing. The question this case raises, and the question the malpractice lawsuits put directly before a jury, is what happens when the system that is supposed to help makes things worse. The Boston Globe reported in February 2026 that Lindsay kept asking the medical system for help and that the system kept moving her along. Letters to the editor have called the case a reflection of a broken mental health infrastructure, one that cycles patients through 15-minute medication checks without the time, resources or coordination to provide real treatment. Whatever the outcome of the criminal trial and the malpractice suits, this case has already changed how many providers think about postpartum care. And it has given a generation of new mothers language to describe what they're going through, and reason to demand better from the system. The criminal trial is set for July 20th, 2026. Lindsay's defense team has requested a bifurcated trial, meaning the jury would first determine whether she committed the acts, and then separately determine whether she was legally insane at the time. The malpractice lawsuits are proceeding on a separate track. They will likely not go to trial until after the criminal case is resolved. Patrick Clancy has not spoken publicly in detail about his position. His wrongful death lawsuit speaks for itself. He holds the medical providers responsible for his children's deaths. Lindsay Clancy remains at Tewkesbury State Hospital. She is paralyzed and in a wheelchair. She is undergoing psychiatric treatment. The trial in July will be one of the most watched criminal cases of 2026. We will be covering every development. This case raises questions that don't have easy answers. If you have thoughts on it, the insanity defense, the malpractice claims, the postpartum mental health system, drop them in the comments. This is one of the cases where the comment section genuinely adds to the conversation. If you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is available 24/7. Call or text 988. The Postpartum Support International Helpline is 1-800-944-4773. If this is your first video with us, subscribe and hit the bell. We cover true crime and forensic science every week. Stay safe. See you in the next one.